you're having this conversation. So there's an interesting thing. I think most people are having more negative conversations than they're having positive conversations.
Okay.
So there's a couple of things that we need to know about that. So one is, if you have this negative conversation with yourself, this thought, and this thought keeps reoccurring, it grows roots like a tree. And your job is to cut it off as quickly as possible. How do you do that? Well, there's a lot of techniques out there about that. One of those is you can put dynamite under it and blow it up. Every time that little thought comes up, you can blow it up. You can work that thought through your mind. You can say, okay, so if that happens, then this happens, and this happens. Oh, and now I'm dead. Okay, well, I died, and that's all I could do about it.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, that's called backing it out to the worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Psychiatrists will use that with you sometimes.
This is your host, Great Moore. Welcome to the Coleman Group podcast, where we believe that the best companies hire the best people and that these organizations have the influence to make the world a better place. Our goal with this podcast is to serve our listeners in order to enrich the communities they serve. I am so excited to have Steve Beecham on the podcast. He is, it's kind of like the first day of fall, and he rides up here on his motorcycle with no helmet, and I think that's who Steve is. And if y'all can visualize that, then you'll understand exactly who he is. Just a brief introduction. I mean, if you want to be a rock star and you want to have better relationships with your customers and coworkers, you got to get Steve into your organization. He is a storyteller like no other. He's a mixture of Jeff Foxworthy, but just a true Southern gentleman that can spin a yarn like nobody I've ever been around. But the great thing about it, guys, is he spins it with these business nuggets that are they're gold. I mean, they are truly, truly gold nuggets that will make you a better storyteller. And I think that, thousands of years ago when we were sitting around the campfires, that's what we did. We told stories. And those stories resonated. And Steve does that better than anybody else. He's an author of 2 books, Bass Backwards, which is just a great title, and then his newest book, What's Your Buzz? And I think that's all about the storytelling. So, Steve, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time, and I'm excited to talk with you and share you with our audience.
Well, appreciate it. I'm tickled to be here, and this is kind of my life work now, and so it's kind of exciting, when you get to do stuff that really is coming from your heart.
That's right.
So
yeah. So tell me about how did you, just kind of give the viewers a background. How did you go from retail shop owner manager to mortgage to now you are an author, you are a wizard when it comes to telling stories? I mean, how did this all transpire?
Well, I've always been pretty much self-employed. I've hardly ever worked for anybody, and I had one of my first things I did is open a clothing store, and my mom, and so we had to learn how to infiltrate the community to get people to come to the store. And then I went from that to the garbage and recycling business. Then I had a bigger community. We were doing business in couple of counties, and so I had to go out and make my village bigger.
That's right.
And then I got into the shutter business with a friend of mine, and that was sort of southeastern, and my village got even bigger. And how do you do that? And then I moved in by accident into the mortgage business, and then that kind of brought it back. And then that was a little bit more concentrated, and basically most of your business came from real estate agents. And so all of that combined, while I was in the mortgage business, I kind of realized that the way everybody was doing their marketing was what came out to me to be bass backwards from what I should be doing. And basically the marketing at that time in the 90s was go out, knock on the door. We handed out rate sheets. Hey, I'm greater than sliced bread. You need to be using me. I'm the guy. And that just didn't feel right. So that set me on a course of saying, there's got to be a different way. There's got to be a more fun way. There's got to be a more loving way. And through a series of a lot of stuff, going to a lot of conferences, reading a lot of books, interviewing a lot of successful salespeople, I came up with the theory of you've got to understand that people have pains and pleasures, and we kind of know that, but we don't do anything with that. And so what I tried to start doing was, as I would converse with people, I would try to find out what their pains are, what their pleasures are, what's going on in your life that's not comfortable right now, or that maybe I can help you with. And what I found was that for everybody's pain, whatever their problem was, there was somebody else I knew in my village who saw that person's problem, as what they did, as their pleasure. So I'm talking to somebody and they're having employee benefits problems, and I say, hey, I got a guy named Great, you need to talk to him. And so those hookups became, what I noticed is I would get this thing called a wow. People would call me and go, wow, that's cool, thank you, that was a great hookup. And then when I got the wows, I started noticing that the more wows I got, the more referrals I got. So in essence, and this came together for me about 2 years ago. I read a book from Adam Grant called Givers and Takers, and he said that there are two types of givers. There's a guy that gives, and he's a guy, you call him and you say, hey man, I got to put up the chairs at the school for the play. I'm running out of time. Can you come help me? And the guy says, okay, fine. And the reason why you called him was because you knew he was somebody that could do it. Right. So he comes over and he helps you put the chairs out. But then he wonders, I never got anything from Steve. I helped him. Why didn't he ever give me a referral? Why didn't he say thank you or anything? Because in my mind, I needed some help, and I looked for somebody that I thought could help me, and he did. But then there's a kind of giver that you call that guy and you say, hey, I need you to help me put the chairs out. And then he shows up with 6 kids from the high school, and they knock the chairs out, and he says, dude, what time you need me back here this afternoon to take them down? And then he shows back up with the kids, and they take them down. And then you go, wow. And so giving is about giving more than what's being asked.
That's right.
And that's where the value is, and people don't understand that. So I started finding that out. I kind of found that out innately through all the stuff that I was doing, because I was really trying to help people. And that's kind of what it all boils down to. So my whole philosophy today is when business is slow, I give more. I give to more people, and I give more to the person in front of me. I try to give all I can. And I realize that if you give, you are going to get some reciprocity. You just don't know from who or when or how, but the more you give, the more reciprocity you get.
No, I agree. And I love that philosophy, and I can tell you, Steve has been a mentor of mine for many years. I've asked him about a lot of things, and he always picks up the phone when I call, and every time it's positive, but he always makes me feel like I'm the only person in the room. And there's very few people that do that. I mean, you hear people talk about that, but when I called Steve a couple weeks ago and said, man, I would love to get you on the podcast to share your story, he said, I'll do it. When can I be there? And that's a big deal, Steve. And I want to thank you for always being there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about just kind of give me a quick rundown on both your books. I want folks to understand what Bass Ackwards is truly about, and then we'll get into.
So let's think about So I go in and do a lot of speaking, do a lot of coaching, from group coaching. I don't do much one-on-one anymore, but anyway, these are some concepts, because if I'm listening to this podcast, hey, give me the meat, man.
That's
let's
right.
have the meat.
Yeah.
So here's the first thing I think that people fail to think about. Number one is, you can't come shop at the guy's store next door to me if you don't know what he's selling.
Right.
And so what I find is that people can't spend money with you if they don't know you're open for business. So people don't understand that. I can't come spend money with you, Great, if I don't know you exist, if I don't know what you do. And so your number one job is to get out the information that, hey, I'm open for business and this is what I do. I don't care how you do that, but you got to get that out. And you got to get that out past the people that already know you. You got to move on beyond that. And that's where people struggle. So how do we do that? And one of the things that you've got to start thinking about is that it's your job to paint a picture to the other people what it is you're looking for. So in the old days, we wouldn't brag, we wouldn't do stuff because if there's any bragging to be done, somebody else is going to do it for us. So we kind of wait, and we're just kind of like, I remember in my store, when I had my clothing store, I had this consultant, and we're standing in the store, and he said, why do people want to come in the store? And I said, well, I don't know. I got blah, blah, clothes and breeches. And he's like, well, let's go outside. We go out in the parking lot, and we stand in the parking lot, and he looks at my store, and he says, tell me why I need to go in there. And that was a big moment for me, and that's what people have to understand. People got to want to come spend money with you. There's got to be a reason. You got to figure out how to attract people into your place of business, and we don't think about that. We're all in the store waiting on the phone to ring. That's not the way it works anymore. Right. So you got to be really so much better about that. And so the way I do that is that every conversation I have to look for an opportunity to paint these people a picture of what I'm looking for. Not that I want that person in front of me to do business with me, but I want them to understand what it is I'm looking for, so that when they're in their travels, if they run into somebody that fits that picture, then they'll think about me. They'll send it to me. So for me, it boils down to, in the mortgage business, I would say to somebody, hey, who's your favorite real estate agent? If you were going to sell your house, great. Who would you call to list your house? Or if you were going to buy a house, who would you call? And you might say, oh, Sally, my cousin, or Sally, my neighbor, or Sally in my Sunday school class. And I'd say, man, I don't know her. I'd really like to meet her sometime. And you'd say, okay, yeah, I'll introduce you to Sally. Well, that's the fastest, quickest, most efficient way for me to get to something that can generate business for me. And now I'm going in as a warm referral from you. Hey, I was talking to my buddy Steve, blah, blah, blah. We understand how that works. But if I don't ask you for that, if I just ask you, hey, keep me in mind if you know anybody who's going to buy a house, well, you understand what I'm saying, but there's no picture. But when I ask you for somebody and Sally's picture comes to your brain, now you understand how I get my business in a weird, different kind of way. And so you've got to come up with something like that. You can't say, in the benefits business, you can't say, who do you know's got 50 or more employees? Well, I know people that own companies, but damn, I don't know if they got 50 employees or 12 or 60. I really don't know. People would say, well, I need companies that got $10 million more in sales. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, if I do $2 million a month in mortgage production, but that's just $400,000 or $500,000 houses in Alpharetta. That may be a big number to one guy. That may be a small number to another guy. So people don't understand your language. And so you got to paint pictures for people, and you got to get it to them in their language. So my mom doesn't understand all about the mortgage business. Neither does my 20-year-old son who's in college. And so how I communicate with them or to other people or to people that are in different industries, right? If you're an IT person, I got to communicate to you differently than if you're a salesperson. And so all of that comes down to, how are you getting this picture to people that when they see this picture in their world, they go, I need to call Steve, or I need to tell them about Steve, or I need to introduce Steve. And that to me is huge. So that's one of the first things that I want people to think about, is you're probably not doing that. You're giving it to them in your language, not their language. And then one of the other things that was kind of what I learned out of writing that Bass Ackward business book is, I can't spend money with you if I don't know you're open for business. If I want to do more business, I'm going to spend more time having deeper relationships with you, learning about your pains and pleasures. Because if you got a pleasure, I want to introduce you to somebody that's got a pain. If you got a pain, I want to introduce you to somebody that's got a pleasure. And then I want to paint better pictures for you so you can refer me customers. And so that's the main essence of that book. And then once I started speaking, what I realized was that I would get up to speak, and sometimes somebody would read my bio, which is what my wife and I wrote, and it looks like I'm this, greatest thing since sliced bread. It looks like I'm Tony Robbins because I'm this great person, right? Or sometimes you get up to speak, and somebody goes, okay, we got a speaker here, Steve, come on up. And there's no bio, and people look at you like, okay, who the heck are you? What do you got to say? And so I realized that the more somebody tells the other person about me, the better, the quicker, the faster, the more trust that there is in the conversation. So that's how I wrote this book, Buzz.
So how did I do on your bio?
I thought you did great. I'm sitting over here smiling, I'm blushing. I'm like, gosh, that's great. Okay. Man, it's awesome.
All right, because I didn't want to read, I kind of wanted to hit some high notes. But,
well, and you did. Okay. I mean, it was perfect. Okay. So the question is you got a personal buzz and you have a corporate buzz. So I have this buzz that people know me about me personally, and then there's a buzz about what I do professionally. So you may have a buzz about yourself, but you also may have a buzz about your company. You may work for Delta or Coca-Cola, and there might be some buzz about that, if you know what I mean. But anyway, let's work on the personal buzz. So one of the things that I found out is I started listening that when people would introduce you, like if you're at the ball field and your kids are playing ball, or you're at church, or you just run into somebody at a restaurant, how does the other person talk about you? Do they say, hey, this is my buddy Steve? Do they say, hey, this is my buddy Steve, he did my mortgage? This is my buddy Steve, we knew each other because our kids played ball together? What do they say? You know, are they saying, hey, it's my buddy Steve, he's a fantastic mortgage broker and he's a great author and you need to hire him to come do a keynote speech? That's what I want them to say, right? Yeah. Well, what you have to understand is that all they can say about you is only what they know about you.
That's right.
And so if I meet this guy at the ball field and I never tell him anything other than I'm a mortgage guy, then he can't say anything more to anybody else other than I think he's in the mortgage business. So now it becomes my job in today's economy to give people the information that they need to be able to talk about me. So we don't want to be bragging. We don't want to be braggadocious, but we have to find opportunities to drip our greatness into the conversation when we're with other people, or to drip our company's greatness into the conversation when we're with other people. So if I'm talking to somebody and they say, you know, hey man, you ever read this book? It's a great book. And I was like, you know, I've written a couple books, so I love great books. Tell me about it. Well, that's the way I just drip that in the conversation. Then they might go, you written a couple of books? That allows me to do that conversation. So, you know, or somebody say, I said, where do you live? I live in so-and-so. Like, who did your mortgage? Well, so-and-so did your mortgage. Why, you know him? I'm like, well, I'm in the mortgage business, you know? Okay, well, I just kind of drip that into the conversation. So you have to do that these days, because I can't brag about great to somebody else if I don't know about your greatness. If you haven't told me about, hey, I was salesman of the month, or my company did X, Y, Z, or, you know, I moved from this company to this company because this company gives me the opportunity to do this stuff that I couldn't do at this other company. So people don't do that. We need to do that.
Yeah. So, but the underlying theme there, which I think you do such a great job, is, and just touch on why this is so important, is you tell a story. You don't say, I'm looking for 50 plus employees that do $10 million a year and the CFO went to Penn State, right?
Right.
I mean, so talk why that's so important. Why does that resonate with people, the way you tell a story? Why is that a bigger hook than just, hey, I'm in the mortgage business?
Well, because they remember the story.
Yeah.
Right. So kind of in my mind is I got to kind of drip you some buzz. And then if you say, you know, oh, you written a book, now I get to tell the story.
I got you.
Okay. So the drip is I got to get it in there so that you know it. I got to get it in a way it doesn't look like I pushed it in there. I just kind of I can't miss that opportunity to let you know that I've done something that you maybe need to know about.
I got you.
And then once I have the opportunity to talk about it more, then that's where I come in with the story.
Okay.
All right. So, you know, you written a book. Yeah. So, you know, like I was in the mortgage business and, you know, but I was calling on real estate agents and I wasn't having a good time, blah, 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 blah. And I just tell this story. Well, you're going to remember that.
That's right.
That's what you remember. I mean, the Indians proved that, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Or all civilizations have proven that. And
so why do you think it is that why don't more people do it? We know it. We know the stories our grandfathers.
Because we were brought up to believe that we're not supposed to brag, that somebody else is supposed to brag for us. And that was fine when we all lived in the same community, and I knew your parents and your grandparents, and they knew my parents and their grandparents, and we knew y'all were horse thieves, and y'all knew we were stealing cars or whatever, or you were the undertaker and I was the shoe guy, and we knew everybody's history, so they didn't really have to talk about it. But today you don't know that.
That's right. But why do you think corporations, I mean, I think they're doing a little bit better job, but corporations are still so black and white, non-story, just not buzzwords like yours, but they're just,
they don't get it. They don't get it. So there's a great book out called Story Brand by a guy named Don Miller out of Tennessee, Nashville. And he's saying that when you do a movie, you do a play, there's a story, there's several storylines, and there's one kind of like the hero's journey or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And he says that this was
Joseph Campbell, Hero's Journey.
Yeah, and so basically the way I've interpreted that in my mind, I mean, it's more to it than what I'm going to tell you, but basically, you're going down the road and you come to a fork, you're the character and you're going down the road and you come to the fork of the road, and if you go left, you're going to fall off a cliff, and if you go right, you're going to marry the princess. Mm-hmm. And at that point in time, a mentor, a guide shows up and says, you don't want to go that way, you want to go this way, right?
Right.
And so what he's saying is everybody's telling the story as they're the character. And they need to tell the story as that they're the guide, and that's where the disconnect is. And so I'm writing out and I'm trying to do an ad or something, and I'm saying, hey, I can do this for you and I can do this for you, instead of saying, hey, have you had this problem? Mm-hmm. Do you ever run into this situation? Here's how we can help.
Yep. So pain, right, and solution.
Yeah,
right.
Same thing.
Same thing, but it's in the story, right? And because that resonates with folks.
Yes.
But if you just tell somebody, hey, this is what you need to do, that may not get you.
No, well, nobody wants to be told what to do, right?
Right.
I mean, my kids remind me of that all the time.
Yeah, but if you throw that bubble cloud up of, hey, have you ever experienced this?
So the story might be, somebody calls me and says, hey, I'm thinking about buying a house and I've got this situation, and I might say, yeah, I ran into this with another friend of mine a couple months ago, and here's kind of how we worked it out. That might work for you.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, I like it. And then it's, especially if it's a touchy situation, you're not saying, hey, you're in a touchy situation, but you're saying, hey, I got another buddy that's on the bus with you. And
lady called me yesterday and she said, I got a really tough situation. I said, well, the last lady that called me and said that, after she left the closing, she cried her eyes out. I said, it was the best phone call I've ever gotten.
Yeah.
What a great buzz, right?
That's a great buzz. Yeah.
And it's true.
It's true. Yeah. No, it is. Absolutely. So, so how do you see this, as far as how do you take your A players, right, at a business, at an organization, and how do you get them to change their mindset? Because it's working for them, right? Like, they've been in the business this long, they're doing this much production, everything's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But hey, if I can get you guys to change the way you're doing stuff, you could exponentially change the way the business operates.
I think I see everything from a family unit. Okay. In other words, if I'm trying to tell my kid to do something, they're not going to listen to me. Mm-hmm. If I'm your boss and you're an A player, you're not going to really listen to me.
That's right.
Okay. But if I'm an effective leader, okay, and I truly want you to get better and want to help you, I'm going to introduce you to other people that you might listen to.
Okay.
And that's my job. It's like I tell people when they bring me in to speak, a manager calls me and says, hey, my people are struggling with so-and-so. And I said, I'm going to come tell them exactly what you've been telling them. Mm-hmm. It's going to sound a little different, but it's the same concept, because it really is.
Right.
But because I'm an outsider, they'll listen to me. And
smart.
Actually what'll happen is it'll make what you've been saying look so much better.
That's right.
It's kind of like, my dad's been telling me that, and then Mr. Smith next door told me that, and I go, oh, my dad's not so stupid after all.
That's right.
But I'm not going to tell him that.
That's right. Yeah. Because then it's, oftentimes the manager was not in production maybe, or maybe they were in production, but he was in production 20 years ago. That things have changed.
Right.
So I like the way I like the way you put
But if you're a big producer, let's say you're a big producer in the mortgage business, wouldn't it, and you work for me, wouldn't it be smart for me to introduce you to a big producer in the insurance business, a big producer of stock brokerage, a big producer at an IT sales, software sales company? Because my theory is, and this is what I tell people all the time, is if you're in the plumbing business, electrical business, the builder business, the insurance business, each one of those categories of businesses have certain ways that they market, certain ways that they do stuff. And the reality is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but you could steal something from a plumber and how he markets and add it to your business. Because what happens is we always try to learn how to market like everybody else in our business is doing. And what I try to do is go outside of my business. I want to steal something that my shoe guy, the shoe repair guy's doing, that I go, oh man, I need to be doing that.
Right.
I want to, that way I'm set myself up to be different.
Well, and the message, certainly might resonate because it's a new message. It's a different story.
If I have a big producer, I'm spending all my time trying to find big producers in town in different industries, because if I'm a big producer in the mortgage business, I want to know a big producer in the insurance business, because we probably can send business back and forth. So I'm actually increasing his market share by introducing him to somebody that's got a lot of volume in another industry that they could refer each other business to. And so I want to set that conversation up.
Yeah. No, I think that's huge. So so I do want to get into, you're writing another book.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit of that?
Yeah. I'm calling it Tapes.
Tapes
You play in your head. So I think this is a game changer. The conversation you're having with yourself is everything.
That's right.
And I think that there's some elements to that. And so what I believe is, the guy that's riding on the back of the garbage truck's having a conversation with himself that's different than the conversation that I'm having with myself, but is totally different than the conversation that a Donald Trump or a Barack Obama is having with themselves. And so each level that you go up the ladder, those people are having different conversations, and that's why they're highly more successful. And I'm not saying necessarily financially, but they're getting. Mother Teresa had a different conversation than we did.
That's right.
So people that are moving up the ladder are having more positive conversations. They're also having more conversations that are more narcissistic, which is ironic. The higher producing people are having these. I can do this. I'm going to do this. Or I'm going to win. Or I'm going to stomp you. I mean,
right.
And I'm not saying that you have to have that, but you need to know that people that are highly successful are probably a little bit more of that. And so some of us fight that conversation. We think, well, I don't want to talk like that. I don't want to be like that. But yet, if you're out on the tennis court and you're playing in your tennis match and you're trying to win, you're having some of that conversation with yourself. So it's really, in a way, somewhat healthy to have that. So you're having this conversation. So there's an interesting thing. I think most people are having more negative conversations than they're having positive conversations.
Okay.
So there's a couple of things that we need to know about that. So one is, if you have this negative conversation with yourself, this thought, and this thought keeps reoccurring, it grows roots like a tree. And your job is to cut it off as quickly as possible. How do you do that? Well, there's a lot of techniques out there about that. One of those is you can put dynamite under it and blow it up. Every time that little thought comes up, you can blow it up. You can work that thought through your mind. You can say, okay, so if that happens, then this happens, and this happens. Oh, and now I'm dead. Okay, well, I died, and that's all I could do about it. Right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, that's called backing it out to the worst case scenario. Psychiatrists will use that with you sometimes. Or you can do this thing. I call it the Flip Wilson. It's like you can say that, you're having this conversation. Well, make that conversation the devil. And the devil's talking to you, and then and you start talking back to the devil. No, you're not going to talk to me like that. You're not going to put that thought. In other words, you're giving that negative thought a personality as if somebody's giving it to you. It's the devil staying there going, hey, they don't want to see you. They've already got a benefits guy. They've already got a mortgage guy, or you're too old, or you're not smart enough. You're not been in the business long enough. And you go, no, devil, you're not going to talk to me like that. Well, I'm going to prove to you wrong. I'm going to show you that I can do that. So you have this one-on-one conversation. Or you can have this three-way conversation where that conversation is so what I do is I get a negative conversation. I put the devil on my shoulder as if he's sitting here, and I say, you're not going to talk to me like that. But then I come over here on this shoulder and I put a mentor. So depending on what the negative thought is, I may have a friend or somebody that I respect, and I put them on this shoulder, and it's kind of like the black cowboy hat and the white cowboy hat, or the devil and an angel. This might be my grandmother. It might be my buddy who's taught me some things in a certain area, and I start hearing this negative conversation. I turn over to this person and start talking. Hey, the devil's over here telling me that I'm not good enough for this guy, and he's like, no, man, you're good enough, and I get this positive reinforcement. It's another way you can deal with it. And then a new thing that I'm starting to realize is it's become like a third-party conversation. So you're having this negative conversation, this negative thought with yourself. And so what you do is you go back to that thought and you say, no, Steve wouldn't do that. You got the wrong guy. Steve doesn't have that. He's not that kind of person. He's better than that. He'll do it differently than that. And so you can have this third-party conversation. So you got to learn to deal with the negative, and then you got to learn to figure out a way to put some positive into the situation. And so then that's where it really becomes fun. And then there's a lot out on that, it's affirmations. There's things to pre-program, or you can put it in your phone or whatever, but you got to have a place that you're growing to. And that's part of the reason why a lot of people have negative conversations is they don't have enough in front of them that's exciting them to go forward.
Right.
It's like you doing this podcast. It's giving you this new excitement, this new stuff, and your brain's spinning like it wasn't before because you're thinking, who am I going to have next? What are we going to talk about? And then you book somebody and you go, okay, I got to get ready. What are we going to talk about? So you're having these automatic positive conversations, whereas they may be replacing what used to be negative conversations because you've given yourself something in front of you to go to, and that's critical. There's so many people that don't have something that they're shooting for.
That's right. Well, and today was Mental Health Day, and we talked about mental health, and I think that's a big deal, right?
It's huge.
Well,
this is mental health. The conversation is all mental health,
and you get like happened with me, right? I started my life in the Army because I'm like, hey, I'm getting out of Alpharetta, Georgia. Right. So I started in the Army because I wanted to do something better. And then I said, well, enlisted's not the way to go. So then I became an officer in the Army, got a 4-year degree, and said, hey, that's the way to go. And then I said, well, I want to get into sales, make some money. And then, 15 years, 20 years later, I look back and I'm like, I'm not reaching for anything, and I'm kind of complacent where I'm at. Corporate job, everything's cool, but then all of a sudden, there is some low-level depression because it's like, hey, I'm not reaching for anything.
And you're not.
And I know I'm not, right? And that's when we talked,
It's not bad enough, but it's not good enough.
That's right. Well, it's good income, but it's not exciting me.
Right.
And I think that's
So here's the game changer. You ready? Purpose. Okay, so you have to figure out what your life purpose is. Part of that is you get to our age and you start thinking about that, okay? I've kind of gotten in my career, when you're 20-something years old, you're just trying to be somebody in your career.
That's right? Yeah.
You're trying to keep up with your peers and prove that you can make it happen. And as you get along, you get like what you're talking about, sort of, kind of on the sofa, if you will. So here's everybody has a life purpose, in my opinion. And so what happens is you start getting in, late 40s and 50s and 60s, and you start saying, okay, what has all of this meant to this point? Why was I born in the family I had, the parents I had, the town I grew up in, the jobs, the experiences, all of this stuff has come to this point, and there's something that I bring uniquely to my village. And what I'm trying to get people to think about on this is it's your sphere of influence. It's not like you're trying to be Gandhi or something,
right?
Okay? What do you bring to the 150 people that you know? And so people have to start thinking about this. What do people call me for? What do people ask me about? What am I kind of the go-to guy for already? And you need to be aware of that. What doesn't happen to my people if I don't make it happen? What's not going to get done if I don't get it done? What do I think that I'm good at? Am I good at fixing stuff, helping people, discovering things, exploring, teaching, coaching? And so most people will come out with something like, I like helping stuff, I like fixing stuff, I like organizing stuff. So you take that as your base model. And then you got to start digging down. Okay, I like helping people, but what I like? Well, I like helping them meet people. I like helping them, finish a project or whatever. And so I want people to boil it down. You kind of start off at 40,000 feet. Now, and I've boiled it down for me is I like helping people get from where they are right now to where it is they want to go. And so when you start fulfilling your purpose and you start living that, then what happens is on a daily basis, everything you do is seen through those eyes. So the mortgage business was fun, and then it wasn't fun when there wasn't any money. And then I kind of discovered my purpose, and I said, you know what? If somebody comes in here and they want to buy this house, and what they're telling me is they're here and they want to go there, and that's the way I'm viewing it. I don't care if it's a big loan, a small loan, a good credit, a bad credit. My job's to help them get there.
That's right.
Okay. If I went to Walmart and I was the greeter and you walked in and said, where's the shoe section, and I showed you how to get to the shoe section, then in my mind I'm viewing that now as you're right here and you're trying to get over there, and I helped you get there. Mm-hmm. If I'm having lunch with you and you're telling me that, hey, I've got X amount of customers and I need more customers, then I'm viewing that as, okay, you're here and you're trying to go there. How can I help you do that? And what I learned from people that are really tuned into their purpose is they don't wait on you to ask them. If they see something going on, if they're sitting at lunch with me and there's a conversation next to us and they hear that and it's in their purpose, they lean over there and say, hey, I heard what you were saying. Let me help you with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's where you got to go, because then what happens is when you see your purpose, then you start getting up and you start thinking about, how am I going to get more of that today? How am I going to push that out? And I go to bed last night thinking, hey, I got to do this. I got to serve my purpose on these 3 or 4 people in my own little way, and I feel good about what I did today, and I'm going to sleep.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Well, because just to your point, that gets you out of bed in the morning, right? And it feeds you, gives you that energy throughout the day.
Because it's not about your job.
No, it's not.
And that's what I found was people would say, I don't like my job and I don't like the company. And basically what I found out is they were sitting their purpose was to help people, and they're sitting there and they're doing IT stuff all day and they're not helping anybody, and so they're bored and they hate their job. Mm-hmm. But if they could get in a spot where they were helping people, they would like their job more, mm-hmm. or fixing something or coaching somebody.
Right.
And that's where people get frustrated in life, is because they get stuck in a job that's not fulfilling their life purpose.
That's right. No, I love it. I mean,
think about it. Why does a guy be a policeman, a fireman, a pastor, a school teacher? It's probably because it's fulfilling their life purpose. It's not about the money.
Right. Yeah, and I think especially early on, I certainly got sucked up to money. Right.
Well, that's part of us wanting to prove that it's kind of how we keep score when we're starting out.
But later in life, it's more about the purpose.
Right.
But, well, Steve, I think this is a good place to bring it to a close. I want to thank you
buddy.
so much for coming on the show. I hope you'll come back when you get the new book.
Yeah,
going.
Love to.
And how can folks connect with you?
SteveBeecham.com. They can email me, steve@hometownmoney.com is my email. And if you know somebody out there that has a company that has salespeople, those salespeople need some new information, and I'm trying to bring them stuff that's fun and exciting, new ways to prospect. And I've got what I call my 52 marketing ideas. And so there's all these little cool ideas that you can put into play to help you increase your prospecting and make more business, and all of it's fun. None of it's cold calling. None of it's lead generation. And it's fun.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again. Please connect with Steve at stevebeecham.com. If you're in the Atlanta area, you need a mortgage, Steve is your guy at Hometown Mortgage.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you.